Hey, so I'm back again talking about another podcast. This time it's the Pretend Friends podcast, which is made by Kevin Cole, Josh Henderson, Nick Murphy, and Paul Ritchie. The game that they are playing in the podcast is called Space Kings, which is actually made by Kevin Cole, and this podcast is sort of their beta testing of it. The way it's played is that each player has a deck of cards, and they flip cards whenever they need to do an action, and the face cards represent successes, number cards represent failures, and jokers are a major failure that the GM can use to do something bad to the player. Josh plays Killcat the Space Cat, which is a Cantonian, or like a little cat man. Paul plays Davil Titor, who's just a human, and Nick Murphy plays Space Freely, who is a literal spaceman, as in a man made of space. What really drew me to this podcast, and why I loved it so much, is not just the fact that I enjoy Paul, Nick, and Josh's humor from their show Continue, and thus I automatically kind of enjoy what they did here, but also what I really loved was the freedom that Kevin gave them in the campaign. He allowed for so many different unique scenarios that made the whole world come alive in a way that felt very genuine and real, and like it made me feel like I was kind of a part of that universe. To give an example, in the beginning, they wake up on a space bus, and then they are later attacked by purple space motorcycles. That's just kind of the zany stuff that you can expect from this. They have their podcast posted on several different sites, but on YouTube, they have thumbnails made by BamZeRam, which adds so much charm to the whole world, and the music is also done by Ace Waters, who I've heard a few pieces from other shows that he does. Like, he does music for a lot of the Normal Boots shows, which is what Continue and subsequently Pretend Friends is a part of. The music is mostly ambient, and because it is mostly a comedy hijinks sort of show that is based on the silliness of it, there aren't a whole lot of moments where there can be a lot of cinematic music playing that really sticks out, but the music itself is still good. It's just not something that really makes the show, I'd say. The most standout parts are some during the finale of the first season, as well as just the main theme of the show. There is an overarching narrative, but again, the show is more about the humor and hijinks that the characters get into, so you shouldn't take it too seriously, because if you do, you won't have as much fun with it. The only real complaint that I had upon my rewatching of it, or rather re-listening, is a bit of a spoiler, so I guess, again, it's not really, it doesn't matter too much because the story is kind of secondary, but if you do want to go in completely blind, you can skip to this timestamp here. But so, what I want to know is, why is it that Bud and Schmitty don't want to return to the rebellion? Like, they mention it in their first, like, in episode 2, Bud says, like, long live the rebellion, and while that's not necessarily a confirmation that he is part of it, it kind of felt like that's what they were setting up to be. And in the third episode, Schmitty reveals he's a spy for the rebellion. But after they join the crew, they don't ever seem to want to get in contact with them. And it's like, well, why are they suddenly no longer, like, wanting to help stop the Empire through the rebellion? Like, it was kind of a goal that they had, and something that actually informed their character, but then they just didn't follow up on it. And I kind of understand why, because, like, it would draw Paul, Nick, and Josh into the rebellion, and it would make it a bit more generic of a podcast, which I definitely probably wouldn't have wanted, but at the same time, these characters had motivations, and then they just kind of seemed to drop them out of nowhere. They've also started a second season of the podcast, which is fantasy-based and is GM'd by Hadley Sinclair. And this is basically just the same premise as Space Kings, but with a fantasy setting, so if you enjoyed Space Kings, then you'll definitely want to keep watching into Season 2. You may have, if you have been watching it and you came to this video after seeing it, you probably noticed that on YouTube they haven't been uploading new episodes, but they have been uploading it to their other sites like Libsyn, Spotify, and iTunes. So there's already 2 new episodes for Season 2. They just haven't made it to YouTube for some reason. So if you want to go see those episodes, you can go to those different sites. This is a great podcast to listen to. It's funny, it's silly, it's just a whole lot of fun. And it's not something that gets too serious to where, like, so if you don't want something that's very plot heavy or requires a whole lot of investment into lore, then this is the podcast for you.